Welcome to back my channel. Mystic Empires. What if I told you that one of history's most magnificent civilizations was built on a prophecy of blood? And that its breathtaking glory was extinguished by a prophecy it never saw coming? This is the story of a people who believed the sun would not rise without the gift of human life. This is the story of the Aztecs, an empire of blood and gold. Imagine it's the year 1325. You are a wanderer, part of a tribe everyone looks down upon. You are the Mexica, a people so despised that other city-states chase you from one patch of swampy land to another. You have nothing, no home, no prestige, no future. You are lost in the Valley of Mexico, a place of glittering, powerful cities that view you as scum. Your priests have prayed for a sign, a divine signal to tell you where, finally, you can lay down your roots and call a place your own. And then, you see it. In the middle of a vast lake, on a small, swampy island, a miracle. An eagle, a majestic and powerful bird, is perched on a prickly pear cactus. But this eagle is not just resting. It is fighting. In its talons, it holds a ferocious snake, writhing and twisting, and the eagle is triumphant. This, your priests declare, is the sign from Huitzilopochtli, your god of war and the sun. This is the place. And so, on that insignificant, marshy island, in the middle of Lake Texcoco, you begin to build. You drive wooden stakes into the soft lake bed. You pile up earth and rock. You build reed huts. It is a humble, almost laughable beginning. No one watching would ever believe that from this mud and reeds, an empire would rise. But that is the first lesson of the Aztecs. The greatest empires can be born from the most hopeless of situations. Your greatest disadvantage can become your most powerful weapon. Because when you have nothing to lose. You are forced to be clever, to be resilient, to be fierce. And fierce they were. The Mexica, who would become the Aztecs, had two powerful assets, an unshakable will, and an unshakable belief in their destiny. They saw themselves as the people of the sun, chosen by Huitzilopochtli to feed him and sustain the cosmos. Their world was not a gentle one. They believed that the gods had sacrificed themselves to create the sun and the world. The sun, in particular, required constant nourishment. The sacred life force, the precious liquid that kept the sun moving across the sky and prevented eternal darkness, was blood. And so, a covenant was forged between the gods and the Aztecs. You give us your prayers, your worship, and the most precious gift of all, human life, and we will keep the world from ending. This was not a choice, it was a cosmic duty. The very universe depended on it. This belief became the engine of their civilization. It fueled their ambition and justified their methods. At first, they were mercenaries. They hired out their fierce warriors to the more powerful city-states in the valley, like the Tepanecs of Azcapotzalco. They were the ultimate underdogs, the soldiers everyone was happy to have on their side but didn't truly respect. But they learned. They studied the politics, the strategies, the weaknesses of their employers. And then, in a stunning display of strategic genius, they saw their moment. When the Tepanec king died, a succession crisis erupted. The Aztecs, in alliance with two other city-states, Texcoco and Licopan, saw their chance. They didn't just join the fight, they led it. They overthrew their former masters. This was the birth of the Triple Alliance. This was the moment the underdogs became the top dogs. From that shaky island city, now the magnificent metropolis of Tenochtitlan, the Aztecs began their meteoric rise. They went from being hired swords to being empire builders. And what an empire they built! Tenochtitlan became one of the largest cities in the world. Imagine a European explorer seeing it for the first time. Canals serving as roads, with thousands of canoes moving people and goods. Immaculate palaces and towering temples, their white plaster gleaming in the sun. Aqueducts bringing fresh water from the mainland. Bustling markets where you could find everything from golden jade to chocolate, vanilla, and exotic feathers from Quetzal birds. There were zoos and botanical gardens. There was a level of organization, cleanliness, and splendor that rivaled anything in the old world. This was the gold, the glory, the artistic achievement, the architectural marvel, the sophisticated society with its complex calendars, its poetry, its philosophy. They were masters of their world. But the blood was always there, woven into the very fabric of their success. Warfare was not just for conquest. it was for a sacred purpose, to take captives for sacrifice. The flowery wars were not fought for land or resources, but for a mutual agreement to capture warriors, to feed the insatiable hunger of the sun god. On the summit of the Great Pyramid, the Templo Mayor, priests would hold a captive down upon the sacrificial stone. With an obsidian blade, sharp enough to cut through reality itself, they would open the chest and offer the still-beating heart to Huitzilopochtli. The body would be rolled down the steep steps of the pyramid, a cascade of crimson against the white stone. To the Aztecs, this was the highest form of service. It was a sacred, necessary transaction for cosmic order. To their subjects and rivals, it was a terrifying display of power and a constant, brutal reminder of Aztec dominance. The empire expanded, but it was an empire built on fear and tribute. Conquered cities were not integrated as partners. They were bled dry, forced to send food, goods, and victims for sacrifice to the insatiable heart of Tenochtitlan. They were creating a powder keg of resentment. Every temple they built on conquered land was a monument to their gods and a slap in the face to the local deities. Every demand for tribute was a seed of hatred. The Aztecs, in their absolute belief in their own divine mission, became blind to the enemies they were creating all around them. And then, the world changed. Strange omens began to appear. A comet, burning a path across the daytime sky. The temple of Huitzilopochtli mysteriously catching fire. Strange people were seen on the coast, men with pale skin and beards, riding deer, as large as houses, and traveling in floating mountains. The emperor, Moctezuma II, a deeply spiritual and philosophical man, was paralyzed with fear. Was this the god Quetzalcoatl returning, as prophecy foretold? The feathered serpent god who had been exiled and promised to return from the east in a specific year. That year, by a staggering coincidence, was 1519. And from the east, on the very day prophesied, Hernán Cortés arrived. This is where the story becomes a profound human tragedy. Moctezuma did not know if Cortés was a god or a man. He sent emissaries with magnificent gifts of gold, hoping they would satisfy the newcomers and they would leave. But the gold only confirmed the Spaniards' desire to stay and conquer. Cortés, a man of unimaginable ambition, landed with fewer than 600 men, a handful of horses, and some cannons. He should have been annihilated. But he was a master of perception and politics. He understood immediately that the Aztec Empire was not a unified nation, but a collection of deeply unhappy, subjugated peoples. He made allies. He found the one thing more powerful than his Spanish steel, the collective hatred for the Aztecs. Tens of thousands of native warriors, from the Tlaxcalans to the Texcocans, flocked to his banner. They didn't see him as a liberator, but as a weapon, the perfect tool to finally break the back of their Aztec oppressors. When Cortés marched into Tenochtitlan, it was not a military conquest, it was an uneasy, tense entry. Moctezuma, trapped by his own beliefs, welcomed him into the heart of the city. The Spaniards were given a palace and treated as guests, even as they secretly plotted takeover. The end came swiftly and brutally. During a religious festival, the Spanish, fearing an uprising, massacred the unarmed Aztec nobility in the sacred temple precinct. The city erupted. The emperor was killed, stoned by his own people who saw him as a traitor. The Spaniards were driven out of the city on a night of such horrific fighting it became known as La Noche Triste, the sad night. They fled, leaving behind most of their treasure and many of their men, dead in the canals. But it was not over. The Aztecs had won the battle, but they had already lost the war. An invisible weapon had arrived with the Spaniards, one far more deadly than any sword or cannon: smallpox. The disease ravaged the native population, who had no immunity. It killed the emperor who succeeded Moctezuma. It decimated the warriors and the civilians. When Cortés returned to lay siege to Tenochtitlan, the city was already dying. The siege was a masterpiece of brutality. The Spaniards cut the aqueducts and blockaded the city. The glorious Venice of the Americas began to starve. The canals, once sparkling with traffic, were filled with the dead. For months, the Aztecs, under their new, young emperor Cuauhtémoc, fought with a courage born of desperation. They fought for every street, every canal, every house. They were not just fighting for their city, they were fighting for their world, for their very existence. But the outcome was inevitable. On August 13, 1521, Cuauhtémoc was captured. The last emperor of the Aztecs surrendered. The empire of blood and gold was no more. So, what is the legacy of the Aztecs? Is it just a story of a brutal, bloodthirsty empire that got what it deserved? No, it is so much more than that. It is a story of breathtaking human achievement, rising from nothing to build one of the world's great civilizations. It is a cautionary tale about the dangers of absolute belief, of becoming so convinced of your own divine right that you become blind to the world changing around you. The Aztecs were defeated not just by Spanish steel, but by their own isolation. Their empire was a collection of conquered subjects, not loyal citizens. When the true test came, it shattered. But most of all, their story is one of incredible, unbreakable resilience. Because the Aztec people did not vanish. They survived. They endured the collapse of their world, the imposition of a new religion, and centuries of hardship. Their language, Nahuatl, is still spoken by nearly 2 million people today. Their foods, corn, chocolate, chili peppers, tomatoes, conquered the world. Their descendants walk among us, carrying the blood of those who built a city where an eagle fought a snake. The spirit of Tenochtitlan did not die in the rubble, it transformed, it adapted, and it endured. The story of the Aztecs teaches us that from the mud and reeds of our lowest points, we can build our own Tenochtitlan. It teaches us that our greatest strengths, when taken to an extreme, can become our greatest weaknesses. And it teaches us that even when your world ends, when everything you have built comes crashing down, the human spirit has a phenomenal capacity to survive, to adapt, and to rise again in a new form. Their empire fell, but their story, their blood, and their gold, are forever etched into the history of humanity. They were the people of the sun. And though their sun set in a cataclysm of blood and fire, its light has never truly gone out. If you found this journey into the heart of the Aztec Empire inspiring, if you believe in the power of history to teach us profound lessons about resilience and the human spirit, then do this for me. Hit that like button, subscribe to Mystic Empires, and ring the notification bell. Because we have so many more empires to explore, so many more stories of rise and fall, of blood and gold, waiting for you right here. Tell me in the comments, what other empire do you want us to uncover next? Until then, remember, history is not just about the past. It's a mirror. Look closely, and you might just see yourself. Thanks for watching. Like, share and subscribe to my channel, Mystic Empires.